Well, hello, I'm Brian, and this is a special edition of AAMI News and Conversation. We're here in beautiful Long Beach, California, day 2 of AAMI Exchange 2023. I'm here with two guests, and we're going to talk about HTM and, most importantly, HTM standards. But I'm going to let my guests introduce themselves. There's some big movers and shakers and probably faces that our members will recognize right away. So we can start with Steve.
Hi, I'm Steve Yelton. I'm the immediate past chair of AAMI's Board of Directors. Been involved with AAMI for many years. Starting out in the HTM arena, I'm a past chair of AAMI's Technology Management Council and have worked on various committees, presented roundtable discussions, papers, posters, everything within AAMI. It's just been a pleasure to be part of AAMI for all these years.
And you know what? I should point out to our audience today that Steve also helped kind of organize the first golf tournament, our inaugural golf tournament, which I heard was a big hit.
It was.
Yeah.
It was. Yeah.
So thank you for that.
I didn't actually play in it, but
you at least got to
fun.
Enjoy a little bit of the greens, right?
Exactly.
All right. And Paul, can you introduce yourself?
Sure. Paul Kelley, recently retired. So my involvement was I originally started one of the chapters for the California Medical Instrumentation CMIA Association and became chair and got known a little bit through that. I had joined an AAMI Standards Committee, EQ56, in the late 80s. And in 2007, here at Long Beach, I was asked to join the newly formed TMC, Technology Management Council. Mm-hmm. And then eventually that led to me joining the Board of Directors. I became chairman of the EQ Standards Committee that we'll talk about some more in a little bit. And eventually, I just recently retired, but I've written papers, done presentations, and just been a cheerleader for the field ever since.
Yeah, that's one of the things I heard is people were talking about, oh, Paul was the face of AAMI Exchange, a big mover and shaker. I understand for both of you, you were foundational members of that TMC, that Technology Management Council. You want to give me a little bit of a background of the history of HTM standards and the TMC? You know, these are kind of guidance organizations for healthcare technology management.
You want to hit the TMC?
The TMC was started many years ago by Steve Campbell, who is now the executive director of the AAMI Foundation, who has been at AAMI for many years, acting CEO, COO, and he saw a need for that representation of technicians, engineers, the HTM field, biomed field in those days. And we created this Technology Management Council. He recruited quite a few of us who were active in the field at the time and just tried to represent the technicians. There was a society within AAMI called SBET, the Society of Biomed Equipment Technicians, and that sort of went away, and the TMC was their new representative. And we have really great hopes for TMC members because they work their way up through AAMI. We've seen several TMC members become AAMI board members. It's just been a great resource for the HTM community.
It seems like a kind of a call to action if people want to get involved in maybe helping guide the future of AAMI HTM, they might want to get involved in the TMC. Is that about right?
Right, and it's probably one of the most popular committees within AAMI. It's one of the most sought after.
Fantastic.
So people really understand the importance of that committee and how great it is to serve on it.
It grew from a committee that, as he said, was started because of a failure of a previous program. Mm-hmm. And at one point, the rank and file technicians felt they had their back being turned on by AAMI. And so it was a way to gain their trust. So at first it was looked at with some skepticism. And then as we moved forward and produced some great outputs and some documents and some guidance, and people started taking notice of those things, and then people wanted to be part of that because they saw what we were doing. And like Steve said, it was just a great thing to be involved in, and I'm really, really proud to have led it at one point.
Exactly.
Yeah, I should note for our members who don't know who I am the digital news editor, digital staff editor for AAMI, and I have to say, we've gotten a lot of really great news and engagement from our HTM community because of those outputs that you're talking about from the TMC. You know, we've got white papers, we have, guidance documents, very, very interesting surveys and reports about retention and things of that nature. It all seems so important, and I'm not sure every technician here knows about it, right?
Right.
I want to talk about that engagement because we also, of course, AAMI is a standards developer. That's our kind of our bread and butter, right? And we have this amazing conference for all the technicians here today, and a lot of them might not even know how to get involved in standards. Are there HTM standards out there?
So there are. In the late 80s, there was a committee formed to create the first HTM standard. And that was my first gateway drug into the whole AAMI experience. I volunteered. I was just a young bench tech at the time, and went to a meeting in Philadelphia where EQ 56 was being debated, and it eventually became a standard. And eventually, I became chairman of the committee for the second revision, and I'm still on that committee. And that standard developed as the minimum requirements for a department. And the concept for it was started by a guy who ran a department. It was outsourced, and he was way ahead of the time. He was computerized, and he watched the new company come in and put everything in file cabinets, and his program was just torn apart. And he wanted a standard that had minimum requirements for an HTM department. It makes sense, right? It doesn't matter in-house or outsourced. It has to have minimum requirements. So that was the whole impetus of that standard. And since then, it's grown. It's been recognized by CMS, by Joint Commission, and we're now on our third revision right now. We're going to meet tomorrow, and the next day to hopefully refine it more. And then when I was the chairman of the committee, I was tasked by the AAMI president to create another standard. And so I drafted it and ran it through the process to get it started. And that became EQ 89, which talked about more of the maintenance side, not the department side. And during that process, one of the members of the committee that a lot of our listeners would know, George Mills, he and I were at lunch and came up with this idea of AEM, of equipment, alternate equipment maintenance. And we put that into EQ 89, and that's where it came from.
So this is guidance for AEM.
Yeah. So it created the whole concept. Okay. And what we envisioned isn't exactly what it's become, but we wanted to give people an alternate source. If you don't have experience with a device, how do you get that? So if I got a brand new widget and Steve has 500 of them, I could contact Steve and say, what's your experience? Do you need to change this part every week or whatever? Right. And that's what we were trying to do. It kind of spun off, but it's all good. So right now, that one is also been recognized by CMS, and that's why Joint Commission can, in their surveys, can ask about AEM programs because it's there and it's a recognized standard. So I've been involved the entire time in all of these, and it's been a great trip. Yeah. And we're looking at some more standards now, and I think I'll let Steve talk about the current ones.
Yeah, what's the future of AAMI standards for HTM then, Steve?
I think the fact that we're talking about HTM standards is significant because aside from Paul, when I started at AAMI, I was from the HTM side and didn't really know much about standards. And HTM standards really wasn't something we heard a lot about. And then Paul's group started doing more. And as a board member, you come in, you have your area, and you try to learn about the other areas. So, you learn about standards, you learn about HTM if you're a standards person, and so forth. So, fast forward, now we're looking at HTM standards to help departments' guidance documents, and there are some in place. But one of the things that AAMI is the lead society for Technology Accreditation Commission for Engineering Technology Biomedical Programs, basically. Right. So we decided that, maybe having an education standard an entry-level standard for college programs in biomed would be really helpful, or HTM. So I proposed that to the CEQ committee and got their blessing. We went forward and got it approved to be developed as a standard. That's where I started learning about standards, because you just don't realize what's involved until you actually do one.
Well, that's fascinating. So this was basically standardizing how to even educate these professionals, kind of set a bar for quality.
Exactly. And that standard can be used by educational programs, but it also can be used by a hospital department. If they're thinking of hiring a graduate of a program and they wonder, is this program any good? They can use that standard as a ruler to see what kind of a program that really is. So we're looking at it as helping everyone, not just educators, but employers and the whole bit. So, as we move forward, we hope to add more HTM standards, and not only in the education side, but also running a department, best practices, lots of those. Just for our members, it helps them run their department. It's particularly useful for the newer department directors. They start off and they finally get that management position, and this gives them a lot of guidance.
I should mention, I was at the AAMI booth maybe an hour ago talking to one of our attendees today, and they were asking if there were any HTM standards, how they could get involved. I was surprised by these questions because it shows that, some folks here might not be aware of what's already available to them.
Right.
And then on top of that, they want to get involved. That need is there. So I should ask, what's the next steps? Is there a call to action here? Do we want more educators involved? Do we want more boots on the ground, technicians involved?
Both. We really, when we develop a standard, especially an education standard, we don't want it totally developed by educators. We want the people hiring our technicians, our graduates, to give us input as to what do they need. So we're looking for everyone. The technicians, managers, directors, anyone. We had Renovo Solutions in a meeting with us, and they're across the country, as well as independent hospitals, colleges. So anybody that's interested, we'd love to have them.
Well, that's fantastic. And I should say, if anybody does want to get involved in standards, be it HTM, sterile processing, even cybersecurity, they can reach out to standards@aami.org. And somebody will be there to help them, direct them into the next steps. We have a lot of committees and a lot of people, a lot of working groups. Steve, I did want to bring up that this year at AAMI Exchange, you were recognized as a fellow here in AAMI. And what exactly is an AAMI Fellow?
It basically is a person who has spent a lot of time at AAMI doing a lot of contributions, and you're recognized by your peers as being one of those people. And I was lucky enough to be one of 6 this year to be in the 2023 class of AAMI Fellows.
Right. And it sounds like a lot of that recognition is because of HTM standards and the work within these committees and the like. So maybe we're talking to some prospective future fellows right now who might be thinking of joining up.
Definitely.
And I hope so. I hope so on both of those. I was lucky enough to be in the charter class of the AAMI Fellows.
Right.
And absolutely, the standards involvement is definitely a stepping stone. I mean, it's not something like the speaker said the other day. It's not something you do necessarily for yourself. It's something you do for the community and whatnot. And it's a great selling point for you in that to help get promotions, help to get a different job, and to help shine your institution. Like with my involvement, I kept our CEO involved, and she would report to the board what I was doing. So once the standard comes out, it has your name and your affiliation, your employer. So it's out there.
And as far as the fellows concerned too, for HTMs, this idea of standards is relatively new to the rank and file of HTMs. So there are a lot of other areas that they can get involved with, and a lot of them have been involved for years and have never really thought of standards development. So that's one of the reasons we were excited about doing this session today, was to let people know that AAMI is making a push toward HTM standards. They've really revamped the standards department. They've added people. They have Mike Miskell, who is now basically the EQ standards guy with HTM. So we're hoping for a lot of great things because of this new, renewed, and the commitment AAMI's making to HTM standards.
Now, I should say Mike's one of our new hires, and he has been a lot of fun to work with, even on my side of things. So shout out to Mike there.
Yes.
I'm sure a lot of the standards committees are having a good time with him.
Exactly.
This has been a really great talk. I wanted to ask, one final thing. If there's one main takeaway for the AAMI Exchange attendees here today to hear from both of you, what might it be? Steve, you want to start it off?
So I think right now people are really excited to be face-to-face again. And I know we were last year in that, but you can just see that, this is a personal opinion, but online is great, the Zoom calls, but just that networking, that face-to-face, people getting to exchange ideas, AAMI Exchange, right? There's a lot of that going on, and I see that this year almost in a rejuvenated form. So that's what my takeaway is, the excitement of being back together.
All right. Paul?
And I think for the attendees, it's take the information you gathered here, be it at the expo or in the sessions, and share it. Take it back to your department, your company, whatever, and share it with other people, because now you're the giver of that information, and it can only help. On a personal note for me, because I haven't come in a few years, it was exciting to see people I knew and reconnect with people like Steve and whatnot that I haven't talked to face-to-face for a while. But even more so was the youth, the younger people out here that are excited about this field. They're asking the right questions. They're involved. I see HTM is in very good hands in the future.
That's very encouraging. I'm glad to hear it.
Yes.
Well, thank you to both of you again for sitting down and talking. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right.